Oh, must be another week. Man, Tuesday's just flying by. Last week we had Justin Deal, Matt Brown, and Sam Davis, and myself. We promised you new interventionists on the IOC's website. So I decided to bring back Justin and Matt just because they needed to work
enthusiasm.
They needed to work on their social skills. So thankfully, we have a new face. We said too male oriented, so we brought Leanne in, and she is going to bring us all together. So, Leanne, welcome to the IOC Weekly Show. It'll change your life.
I bet. I can't wait.
Not maybe in a good way, but it'll change your life.
I just said
next week you get to hear Jay say, "Oh well, we brought Leanne back."
Yeah. Yeah. We had such high expectations, and now
Well, we ran a focus group, and this is where I was wrong. So I didn't think the public would like Justin and Matt very much. I just didn't think that they came off lovable.
Wow.
And turns out the focus group loved you two. I mean, just could not say enough great things about you two. So
Jay, when you're a big man to be able to admit when you're wrong, and I appreciate that.
Yes.
Jeez. Leanne, why don't you kick us off and just kind of introduce yourself, just kind of give you a brief rundown of yourself.
All right. Well, my name is Leanne, and I live in Georgia. So I just recently went through Matt and Sam's certification, the intervention certification class, the training. And it was phenomenal. It was, to be honest with you, it was everything I hoped it would be. So, just learning some new skills, getting my name out there. And, I got my business, kind of going, got my business cards going. So I actually work in treatment here in Georgia. So, and I've been in recovery myself for 8 years. So it's been a ride, and I'm telling you, I'm glad. If I could say one thing, I could honestly say that I'm glad that no one did it for me like I wanted them to when I first came in, because it would have definitely cheated me out of the journey. It's been a journey these 8 years, and I'm actually going towards something I've always wanted to do. I believe I was pulled out so I could go back and pull others out. And so that's what I'm here to do, guys. So I'm super excited about this.
There we go.
Awesome. Matt, you still in Oregon?
I am. I'm in Oregon. I'm in Bend, Oregon, the beautiful city of Bend, where today the low was like 27 degrees when I woke up. So still haven't had our spring yet. So still waiting on that. We actually got a little flurry of snow yesterday, but Bend, Oregon. Love it up here in the Northwest, and love being an interventionist. And Leanne, just let me say that I'm proud to have you on here. It's nice to be colleagues now, and nice to stand shoulder to shoulder with you. And I think that you're going to be one to watch. I think you're going to do great things.
I appreciate that, Matt.
Yeah.
Had a good year.
Freedom Interventions is Matt Brown. Justin, you're still in Minnesota. You're not leaving anytime soon.
Well, we'll see, because we're also still getting snow and highs in the 40s. But yes, I am still based for the time being in St. Paul, Minnesota. And welcome, Leanne. Glad to have you on the podcast, but also part of Intervention on Call.
I appreciate that. I'm glad to be here, guys.
Recovery in Action is Justin is in Minnesota. I'm Jay Staples, owner, operator, extraordinaire of Sober Caddy Creative Agency. I'll be your MC. The focus group loved me as MC. They did not like it when I gave my input. So we're just going to keep it within the three of you guys. And then I will still be in for funny comments and maybe some sarcasm. All right, let's kick it off.
All right.
I have seen the show Intervention on television. Does that portray interventions correctly? Let's start with Justin.
Well, it's been quite a while since I've actually seen that show. I don't know if lawyers watch Law and Order for entertainment, but I do think, from what I recall, the show does, have the loved ones write letters and read those. So that, I think, is about where Real Interventions, I don't think it shows all of the work that we do before the intervention takes place. The show just shows the individual and, you know, how desperately they need to change the path that they're on.
Yeah, there is no editing with a Real Intervention. So that hour-long show, or was it 48 minutes with commercials? That's pushed in. But Matt, what do you got to say? Is the show Intervention portrayed correctly?
Well, just so that I don't come off too salty, let me just say that I've auditioned for the show twice. They invited me to audition, and I've never been picked to be on the show. And, you know, I will say to you guys what I said to the casting directors that interviewed me, and that is, you know, the biggest problem that I have is that the first 45 minutes of the show, you're watching somebody kill themselves. You're watching somebody, and the only reason you know they're not going to die is because the intervention hasn't happened yet, but they're on their way there. And you know, they're getting some really awful moments of somebody's life caught on camera. And I get, like, there's a lot of relatability to that. There's some things that people can relate to when they see that in their loved ones. If you know, and I've done interventions where the person's like, I used to get high and watch that show all the time, wondering when mine was going to happen. But as far as the structure of the intervention goes, like Justin was saying, like, that they do have letters. It seems to be you know, more of a traditional Johnson model intervention from, you know, what I've seen from Ken Seeley, who I love and is a dear friend, Candy Finnegan, and, you know, the other interventionists that have kind of come and gone from the show. It's more of a Johnson model, which is really kind of my model of intervention. Mostly I've adjusted a few things from probably what would be a typical Johnson model, but I think that, you know, when you look at this, you got to remember, like, you're not just seeing the family and the interventionist on camera. There's camera operators, there's producers in the background. Like, there's more than one take happening sometimes. Like, it's not always accurate, I guess is what I will say. What I will say is that I know that the emphasis behind the show is really to get the awareness out there that intervention is a tool that can be used to help families in crisis. And I appreciate that, because I think that there's more people that are aware that there's an opportunity to have an intervention because of that show. And I'm grateful for that.
All right.
They're missing out, Matt.
Thank you, Masomi. Thank you.
So,
Love that guy.
Leanne, is the show Intervention a right portrayal of real interventions?
Well, me personally, you know, I remember watching that show when I was getting high, and to actually watch that show, I was hoping someone loved me enough to see, because I didn't know how to kind of, I knew I was dying, but at that point I didn't know what it looked like, and if my family really knew. Like, I honestly thought I was keeping it a secret. So when I was watching that show, I was like, you know, I was hoping and praying, if it wasn't an intervention, or if it wasn't that somebody would stop me before I killed myself. So watching that show sober, that's, I mean, even when I was using, that's something I knew I wanted to do. I knew I was uniquely qualified to do that type of work. And you know, I always, from the time, you know, I stopped using, or when I was using to now, you know, I look back on my siblings' lives, and I was like, you know, why didn't they have the life I had? Why didn't they go through the things that I went through? And I had resentment. But you know what? When you realize, and Mark Twain said it the best, you know, the best 2 days of your life, the most two important days of your life is the day you were born, the day you figure out why. Honestly, that was it for me. So intervention actually led me to get sober, and actually wanted to do this. And I thought it was so far-fetched, like it was beyond me, because my self-worth, you know, I'm my own self-worth critic. I didn't think I had it in me. I didn't think I was smart enough. I didn't think I was, had the ability to even speak like those people did. But you know what? I do. And I am. And that's what I'm doing. And so I haven't had a chance to actually perform um, an actual intervention yet. But I can honestly say that show, um, it definitely, because I did in training with Matt, it doesn't show, what we need to do is what the family, like if the family has a voice, because on there it's clearly, it shows family doesn't have a voice, but it helps the family understand the roles in addiction and recovery process. And that's something that isn't, I believe, from watching the show and what I saw in training. So to kind of, I feel like I'm blabbing on here, but but yeah, it helped save my life, and I'm ready to help save others. Not save their lives, but teach them how to save their own. In other words.
Well, two rock stars within the treatment facility. Heather from Ocean, don't say Oceans, Ocean Recovery out in California. Heather and the Godfather Musome from Cottonwood, Tucson. So we're getting the treatment centers to watch us. They may not listen to us, but they're watching us at least. But anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. I cannot keep the comments on there very long because it pushes Leanne and Matt. It just, whatever. We're kind of a low budget here. And so everything, obviously, as you can tell, gets pushed up. So
we'll just have to see if the focus groups like the comments better than the top of our heads in the next one.
Anything less than us, I mean, they love the comments actually because it shuts us up. But so it would absolutely. Here's my only thing with intervention, the show Intervention. This is what I always thought. Like if someone's telling me that they're going to follow me around with my addiction, the word's got to get out, right? Like, do you not know, like, you're going to be having an intervention done? Like, what do you think? Like a film crew is just, anyway. So that was my only concern.
That actually came up during the time that I was interviewing. I said, how do you keep people from figuring out that it's intervention? And so what they told me was, if somebody asked, hey, is this the TV show Intervention? They were coached to respond, why do you think you need an intervention?
Ooh.
And that would usually shut the conversation down and it wouldn't go any further than that.
Oh, wow.
Okay. That's good. That's good.
Yes.
How do we decide who should be involved with the actual intervention? I didn't put names on this time, but another tremendous question. Matt, we'll start with you. How do you decide who should be involved with the actual intervention?
Well, the first question I ask is, is having more people in the room going to make this person feel more cared for, more loved, and have a warmer entry into the conversation? Or is having more people in the room going to create a lot of shame and a lot of resistance? Now, the caveat in that is sometimes having more people in the room is the right move because there's less manipulation that can happen now that everybody's all in the same room. So there's some balancing there. Now, what I will always do is, as far as the rehearsal and the preparation process go, I want everybody to be a part of it. As long as, especially if we're doing a surprise intervention, I want everybody to keep it in the vault, come be a part of the prep work, but just keep it in the vault. As we go along, we may decide, hey, this person's probably not going to be a good fit because having them in the room is going to invite conflict that really doesn't need to be there. The relationship is such that, having them there, either the person's going to be like, what the hell is my brother-in-law doing here? Or my sister-in-law? I don't have a relationship with them. Or, why is my, ex-wife here? We don't even have kids together. Even if all those people really care about the individual, sometimes I'll have people be a part of the prep work simply to be a support to those that are going to be doing the intervention. So I want them all being a part of the preparation work. I want to make sure that the people that are the greatest enablers are absolutely going to be in that room. I want to make sure that the people that are most likely to act out in unhealthy behaviors are there and are willing to commit to making some changes. Because if that can happen, it kind of goes back to what I say about the relationship between oxygen and fire. If you can take the oxygen away from the fire goes out. And if you can take the enabling away from addiction, it's not the recipe for long-term recovery, but it can stop the fire from burning in that moment. and allow that person to have a different experience. And so that's really, as far as who's going to be in the room, is can they support the person? Can they commit to stopping it, removing any enabling? That's really kind of what I'm looking at the beginning. And then of course, having people to be a support to those that are going to be a part of the intervention during the process as well, because I think they need some support. They need some accountability as well.
Leanne, how do you decide who shows up or is involved in the intervention?
Well, I kind of agree with Matt. It's definitely going to be people that's going to bring positive energy to the room. People that's going to be a part of the solution, not the problem, because we know what we know what the problem is. It's time to get solution based, and and that's a big part in this is knowing the room, setting the room up. Because you would think that wouldn't help, but it really does. So I would have to agree. Everything Matt said, I could, he took the words right out of my mouth. Somebody, that is a part of the addict, alcoholic, or your loved one's life that is not an enabler. If they're an enabler and they're, and not willing to change, it isn't that if they're an enabler, then an enabler needs to be in that room, because the enabler, we do need to put the fire out in some case, because the loved one's life depends on it at that point, I feel like. And so I agree with Matt a lot. So that's all I have to say about it.
When in doubt, agree with Matt. That's what I have. It's got me.
That's a horrible rule to live by, just so you know. That is not
far in life.
Good advice. Not.
Justin, how do you decide who's going to be involved with the intervention?
Well, I agree with Matt. No,
gosh, you guys are all in trouble. I'm just letting you know right now, you're in big trouble.
I do, but I guess, the way I describe it to families is that it's quality, not quantity. I've had interventions where it was the husband and me intervening on his wife. All of her friends, her family had washed their hands of the life choices she was making. I've had interventions where it was both grandparents on both sides, siblings, cousins, a couple of friends. I think it was like 14 people. And when I have one of the first conversations with the point person or people from an intervention, one of the things I inquire about is, have you had an opportunity to express your concerns? Because my greatest fear is, because I've been, kind of like Leanne was saying a little bit ago, this field picked me. I started this journey on the cushion of the addict. And knowing that, my greatest fear is that you won't be crystal clear and have a conversation on not just seeing the problem, but offering a solution and another door. And if you are a person that would, when you put your head on the pillow, regret that you weren't there, that you didn't say something, and maybe impact whether or not the individual agreed to get help, then you should be there. It doesn't matter how big it is. That's why it's important to have a professional there to mediate, who's talking and who's not. I still remember from years and years ago at a planning meeting, my client was the wife. She had, rightfully so, invited her mother-in-law. And I partly remember because it was the identified individual's 56th birthday was the day of the intervention. So the whole process started by me wishing him a happy birthday and then asking if he would come into the living room to hear his family express some concerns and love. But at the planning meeting, I told his 80-some-year-old mother, I don't know if I can have you there tomorrow if you cannot shift, because she was such an enabler that, if she couldn't at least create some new boundaries, then despite the fact that, she was part of the problem, she wasn't going to be at the intervention the next day.
Well, my greatest fear is having a snake come out of the toilet, but I think our fears are different. But anyway, side note on that. Now let's touch on Justin and Matt. I'll start with Justin and go to Matt. And my question is go deeper on this. How do you handle the family member that you've asked to come to the intervention and doesn't want to, or wants to come to the intervention and you think it's best that they don't show up to the intervention? How do you handle that?
Matt, you want to go first?
Sure. So a couple of things occurred to me while I was listening to Justin as well. Number one, when you're creating boundaries with somebody, there's really only two reasons to do it. The first reason is, am I enabling this in any way? Am I enabling this to stay the same? And am I enabling this to get worse? Am I enabling this just by staying silent? Sometimes that's how we enable, is just, I don't want to talk about the elephant in the room, no matter how big it is. It's going to create conflict. There's going to be this eruption. And so I'm just going to ignore it. The second reason to create boundaries is, am I being harmed? Am I being harmed emotionally, financially, and, God forbid, physically? But that happens sometimes. If the answer to those two questions is no, then you really don't need to change your relationship with somebody, but you may want to express your willingness to support or hold accountable somebody else in the room that might have to have more significant boundaries. To be able to say to them, hey, I love you, and I'm so glad that if you choose not to get help today, I'm not going to have to change my relationship with you. But I need you to know that your wife might. She hasn't talked yet, but whatever she's about to say, I support it, and I got her back 100%. Or your parents might, and I've got their back 100%. I'm going to hold them accountable to whatever changes they feel like they need to make. The other thing that I have too is, during the intervention, and this is a rule that I talk about with families from the moment we start planning this, is the one rule that I really have people stick to, especially like in the first 15, 20 minutes of the intervention, is do not do or say anything that I don't ask you to do. If your loved one asks you a question, if they make a comment to you, you look at me before you respond. And they're going to go after the enablers in that room, or they're going to go after the people that are going to be the most contentious in that room, that are most likely to let their guard down and respond emotionally. And if that person is willing to just look at me first, if the response to their question or to their comment is going to be best heard coming from them, if I feel like, hey, this is not manipulative, this is a legitimate question, go ahead and answer it. I'll let them know. But if there's manipulation involved, if there's distraction involved, if, hey, I'm just trying to pick a fight here with somebody so that I don't really have to talk about what we're here to talk about right now, I can just get mad and storm out of here. And if I create a fight and I can just pretend I'm mad and storm out, that's it. I'm done. I'm leaving. This is bullshit, or whatever. And so I do have some rules in place to kind of mitigate that in the beginning. Most of the time, once we're a few minutes into the intervention, we're past that point where we're going to create a whole lot of conflict. The surprise is over. That feeling, oh, they're ambushing me, that's been dealt with and that's out of the way. We're now having a productive conversation, a respectful conversation, and I can let my guard down a little bit around some of their behavior in the room. But I want them to know, like in the beginning, follow my lead.
Okay.
Justin?
Well, so something that Matt mentioned, I had an intervention years ago in Montana, where my clients were the siblings, two brothers and a sister, worried about their other brother. There were reports, at least, of years back, the individual being physically abusive to his wife. And so for that reason, I wanted her to have legitimate deniability on knowing anything about this if he said no. And so we left her in the dark. But I also was concerned because the siblings all reported that, 5, 10 years ago, she used to express concerns about his drinking, and that had not happened in the last 5 years. And I was afraid that she kind of had Stockholm syndrome and had become codependent to a phase where she might give him a heads up. As it turned out, it was more the latter that took place. She tried slamming the door on us, saying, everything's fine. Why are you here? And I chuckle because one of the brothers took a kick to the shin, and then when she shifted her weight, we got the door open a little bit, and then I took a kick, not to the shin. But we moved forward, and things were not well. He was bedridden, and so that's how codependent and enabling she was. But those were reasons not to have somebody involved. I've done interventions where a sibling has said, I smoked weed with him. Is it okay if I'm there? And I asked, well, when was the last time you smoked weed? And it was 4 years ago, and they have completed law school and started a family, and their brother was now doing cocaine and other illicit drugs. I was like, yeah, I think it's okay that you're there. And if he wants to bring that up, right, we can use that and say, if you think that that's still an issue, what a wonderful message to your sibling, your kid, whoever it is, that you too can get help. And I'm going to show you how that's done. And if that person that you're bringing up, doesn't turn their life around, I'm happy to come back.
And if I could, because I think Justin really makes a valuable comment here. I have interventions all the time where the person that we're intervening on is not the only person struggling in the room. Yeah. Mom or dad might have a drinking problem. I did an intervention one time where the guy's drug dealer was in the room. We didn't know when we first invited him to be a part of the intervention. We didn't know that he was the drug dealer. He was a buddy from college. But during the intervention, I ask people now, and there was one time where I did an intervention where it was an 18-year-old girl. She'd moved from her mom's house to her dad's house because mom couldn't handle her anymore. About 5 minutes into the intervention, she turns to her dad and she's like, Dad, what the hell? You and I got high together last night. What is this? And I'm thinking, that would have been really good information to have 5 minutes ago. But the reality is when you have people in the room, whether they're social users or casual users, or whether they're struggling with a real problem, to be able to say to that person, you're trying to throw so-and-so under the bus right now. And I get that. But here's the way I want you to look at that. If these people in this room who know their way around a bottle, who know their way around a meth pipe, or whatever it is we're there to intervene for, if they're telling you that they're worried about you and they're willing to set aside that whatever sense of hypocrisy they might be feeling because they're asking you to do something that maybe they themselves haven't done yet, that's kind of special. We're going to pay attention to that. And I don't want you to use that against them, because in spite of their struggles, they love you enough to put themselves right alongside of you today. So you're not going to use them as, put them in the spotlight or putting them in the crosshairs just to get out of it yourself. And so I think that there's some value in that. If you have people in the room that, that in my opinion, that qualifies them even more to be there in many ways.
I mean, kudos to the drug dealer for putting business aside and dealing the personal. Like obviously that's business related, and it's like, you know what, I'm still going to show.
Well, and the reason he brought it to my attention was, the reason I brought up this 18-year-old girl is because ever since that intervention, I've asked people like, hey, if you've ever used with this person, if you've been associated with this lifestyle in any way, we don't have to talk about this as a group. Just call me and let me know so that I'm aware of this, so that I can use this, in the best way possible if it comes up. And so this guy called me. He's like, hey, I just need you to know that I'm the one selling him the drugs. I'm like, okay, are you willing to stop? And he said, yeah, I am. I said, do you have a problem? It's like, I don't think so. Not like this guy. Well, 2 weeks later, the drug dealer calls me because I had offered him an opportunity. I was like, if you want help, once I get your friend taken care of, if you want help, all you got to do is call me. 2 weeks later, I got a phone call and he's like, okay, I think I do have a problem. I'm ready. And we got him into treatment as well.
You know, people just picking the wrong line to work sometimes, you know, like, let's go along the same lines here. How do you enroll kids into the intervention process? Seems a little overwhelming for young kids, but I know my husband would melt if he heard them saying, I want to get better.
These are some really good questions this week. I mean, not that last week's weren't, but these are great.
Wait a second. That is offensive to the 4 people last week or 5.
I'm not saying that their questions weren't good, but these are really like the game
know.
has stepped up here. I'm just giving them credit for asking good questions.
You know, you just crushed him. You just crushed him, man.
Wait, Jay, did you make up those questions last week and put fake names next to them? Am I hurting your feelings?
No, I actually didn't.
I'm just kidding.
I actually wish I would have wrote these questions and then I'd be like, well, I actually made these questions up. But anyway, let's get to it. Justin, let's enroll. How do you enroll kids into the intervention process? Seems overwhelming for some kids.
Well, my rule is 13 or older. Anything younger than that is just, they're not developed enough to understand. And really at 13 and 14, it's a case by case, decision. But it's absolutely very helpful and important to have those younger voices still heard. And I will walk the other parent, through it, or do a call with the parent and the ones that aren't going to be there on a different style of letter than what everybody else is going to be, using, and encourage them to just use their own words. Because, I mean, any intervention, you can't use logic to get somebody to agree that they have a problem. You have to knock a chink in the wall of denial. And yeah, a 6-year-old, I mean, I think it was a conference out west where I heard Jerry Moe doing a presentation that a 5-year-old was in a session, with a parent that was in treatment and sharing what they had seen. And so even at 4 or 5 years old, kids know there's something not right. And for them to use their own words at what they are seeing is extremely impactful. But they shouldn't be there seeing a parent go through the actual intervention.
Leanne, any insight on how you enroll kids into the intervention process?
I would have to say I can only go on my what I would, and if my kids was impacted by it, and my kids were under the age of 10. I think my oldest was 12, and they knew something was wrong, but they didn't know what it was. They knew mom was sick, and they knew mom just wasn't herself. So I would think it would benefit for the over 13 or because my youngest one just didn't know. And if they don't really know what's going on or the dynamic of it, it might have a little bit of trauma. And people say that, weed's the gateway drug here, but I don't think so. Trauma is. And I wouldn't want to create another problem. And I personally would either another letter or have them call and just kind of the conversation go toward, hey, your father, your mother's sick, and they just need some help with, and we can convey it that way, that more than being a part of in the room if they're not of age. Now my oldest child, I would have to say he would have been in there. because he knew a lot more than I thought, and kids usually do. But the younger ones, I would definitely have to a phone call. I would want them to be a part of it in some way, but not the dynamic of what it takes when you actually perform the intervention inside the room. So that's my take on it.
Matt Brown, how do you enroll kids into the intervention process?
Well, there's a couple of factors here. My cutoff is a little bit older. I usually cut off at 16. I will make exceptions if we're intervening on a parent and the other parent feels like very strongly, hey, they need to be in the room. I'll go down, 14, 13, but there's an innocence there that has to be protected. And we're not on our best behavior when we're in the middle of our own intervention. I mean, there's things that get said in the emotion of the moment that I would just not want a child to hear. The other thing too is that young kids have this tendency, because of the development of their brains, to take responsibility for the outcome. And so if mom or dad doesn't agree to go, they're left with, well, why didn't they listen to what I said? I wanted them to go and they didn't. Therefore, I must have done something wrong, or this is my fault. And I think that absolutely has to be avoided. So what I'll normally do for somebody younger than 16 is I'll have them record a video message. I even try to avoid like a FaceTime call or something like that, just because when you're recording a video, it's a one-sided conversation. We play the video for them and they really just kind of have to sit and listen to that and watch their child, read that letter to them or speak to them to the camera. And it gives them the opportunity to say what they need to say in their own voice. Nobody's going to read the letter for them. They're actually delivering this. And usually it sounds something like, if they were intervening on a dad, to say, mom tells me that she's going to ask you to go and get some help today. And I hope you will. I love you. And I want you to be happy. And I want you to be the kind of daddy that I need, or whatever, that message is going to be. But have it done kind of in isolation, to be able to say, hey, we're going to provide some insulation between the parent and the child in this particular case. And there's even times like if they agree to go and get help, it's not always right for the parent to say goodbye to the child. Sometimes that's going to be traumatic for the child. They may not understand what's going on, and it may be to make the parent feel better, but it's going to make life worse for the child. And so even if they agree to go to treatment, I don't always have that reconnection or that goodbye before they leave, just because it's going to be harmful. So there's a lot to unpack in that question. And that's why I thought it was a really good one, but that's just kind of the first things that come to mind for me.
Yeah. I'm reminded of an intervention. It was a twofer. We were intervening on both mom and dad. And so grandma and I were the front two at the back door on a Saturday morning at 7:30. And grandma said, we're here to have a conversation with your folks. And this little 8-year-old said, it's about time.
Wow.
And we had it planned, an aunt was taking her to, her house. And the dad actually wasn't even home yet from going out Friday night. So we intervened on mom, and she agreed. And not knowing if dad was going to come home at noon on Saturday or 8 o'clock on Sunday night, we left a message for the dad to give me a call. And I then, I got in trouble. It's when I worked for somebody else and I went back alone. But all I had to do was share what his daughter had said. And he's like, let me get a suitcase.
All right. My main concern is job related. I would hate to have his job find out that he needed an intervention. How does his job play into the intervention process? He travels for work and has a territory. How does a job fit into an intervention? Matt Brown?
So depending on the size of the company, if there's more than 100 employees and if they've been at work for more than a year, the Family Medical Leave Act takes effect. So what they would do is I would advise the treatment center when they get there, one of their medical staff would fill out the paperwork with him. It's not always necessary for them to even disclose the condition that they're getting medical treatment for. And if it is disclosed, it's only given to HR, and that information should not go anywhere else within that company, provided that they don't want to open themselves up to litigation. All there has to be is an expected return date, and that doesn't always have to be carved in stone. And they cannot, I mean, they're not going to get compensated while they're in treatment. You know, they can still use vacation days or personal days, but they can't get fired. Now, that doesn't guarantee that he's going to have the same job when he gets back. But what it does guarantee is that he's probably going to be a better employee when he gets back. And so I get called in from time to time to do even executive interventions where a company is trying to save somebody on their team. And, you know, it's a different kind of intervention. It doesn't always have to be done by surprise. In fact, oftentimes it's not. And so that's a different type of conversation. But I've done interventions where the guy's boss was at the intervention, and he was able to say, listen, if you go and do this, you've got a job when you come back. I want you back at my company. If you don't, I'm going to have to let you go because I can't continue to employ you and provide you with a paycheck knowing what you're using it for. I'm not going to do that. And so sometimes there's, you know, a dual relationship there, whether they're friends and a boss. But if it's just, you know, somebody working for kind of a bigger corporation where they're not, they need the job. Obviously, this person sounds like they're a salesperson. They have a territory to cover. You know, if somebody comes in and fills that job and does a better job while he's gone, they'll probably keep the job, but he's going to have a job when he gets back. They cannot terminate him as long as the Family Medical Leave Act is used.
Leanne, got anything concerned? Is job related? How does the job fit into an intervention plan?
You know, definitely you're protected, you know, by different laws and stuff. But working in treatment, I run across this a lot, and, you know, and going a little deeper into this, the addict alcoholic, once they do go in treatment, if they accept the help and they go into treatment with their intervention, you know, drinking and drugging is not a problem. You know, and I've seen a lot of people, you know, they go through the FMLA process and they do what they got to do. And then they come back for the second and third time into treatment. And then they realize, crap, you know what, that job was the reason that I'm here. And I'm not saying that's the case with this person whatsoever, but, you know, fitting an intervention into it, as long as you got the where you want your job and they can protect you from, you know, losing your job because they can't say anything. I deal with it all the time, and people freak out about it, and they're like, you know, what am I going to do about my job? Well, what if this, what if that? But at the end of the day, this is life or death. You know, you're going to be a different person when you finish treatment. And you know what? I've seen it where people, their life changed so much to where, you know, they change careers. So that's I like to go deeper into it and say, hey, I don't even look at the legal side of it. I look at the insanity side of it, saying, hey, might not need the job any damn way.
That's a good point. Yeah. Anything we put in front of our recovery, we stand to lose, including jobs.
Yep.
Justin.
Well, Matt did a great job of covering the legal parts of it. Usually, I guess we would get this question from a spouse or the parents of an individual. And so it's more their concern maybe than the actual individual, especially if it's maybe a spouse. Oh, I guess parents don't want to also start picking up the tab again, but
usually with parents, it's school. It's not a job.
Yeah. But, you know, my response to whomever is asking is, listen, eventually the job is going to notice that expense accounts are being padded, that meetings are being missed. They're going to hear from customers. And so, you know, why not get out in front of this and say, hey, you know what? It's not that I don't love my job. It's that I have this love affair with a substance that is, you know, killing me. I'm going to go address that and come back. And I think, to Leanne's point, you may not want to rush back out on the road where you don't have as much accountability, as much support. I too had a job, where it was the company that was wanting to have a conversation with their vice president of sales, and businesses, larger companies, have put in thousands of dollars in training and getting somebody to be the best salesperson or marketer that can be out there. They don't want to lose that investment. So you can tell the individual, look, I mean, this is in some way, shape, or form going to be here. You're just going to be better at it. But in that case, I mean, the gentleman was asked to not go out on the road for the first 6 months of his sobriety.
Well, I know from personal experience and just professional experience, this is the biggest obstacle. You get an executive that believes that, the drinking is, I mean, I'll speak for, I thought drinking and going out to dinners and closing deals over dinners and scotch and steak and a steak. I mean, I thought that was normal. I mean, I saw everyone do it. All the movies did it. My dad did it. I mean, everyone, so this is the biggest obstacle. And talking with executives, there's this belief that, I would hear you guys say that you're probably going to do your job better after sobriety. I would have a hard time believing that, because that was my biggest belief, was that you needed to sit around and have a scotch or something. And sometimes I know executives struggle with this big time. So that's where I'll leave it. I don't want to get too far into it, but anyway, closing thoughts, Leanne?
Closing thoughts. I would definitely have to say that, is it on everything that we've talked about? Is that what
I just put you on the spot because I like
yeah,
to do
you
that.
definitely put me on the spot. I'm like, okay.
I mean, the newcomer, you got to, I mean, there's some hazing involved. Like anyone that says the newcomer doesn't get hazed hasn't been around me. So
closing thoughts is, man, to anybody that is out there that needs any help or a part of a loved one that's going through this stuff, man. Interventionist is someone, me personally, I've been there and I've done it, and I know, the thoughts. I know, it's hard as heck, man. It's not a lifestyle that you get up saying, hey, you know what, I think I'm gonna get up and be a drug addict today or an alcoholic. So I think with the hope, strength, and experience in it all, that I'm brand new at this stuff, but man, I've got a lot of faith, and I've got a lot of determination, and hearing Matt and hearing Justin and Jay tonight, just give me a little bit more insight on when I do perform my intervention, like, hey, the ages, the jobs, all the stuff that I really didn't think about, so I'm always up for, further educating myself on this, because, man, like I said, I'm brand new, and I don't mind sitting here saying, hey, I don't know very much about it, but I do know enough to know how to probably get this thing on. So that's about all the closing thoughts I have. Thanks, Jay.
All right, we've got another question. The Godfather.
I think this is the most important question of the night, by the way.
I asked him some important questions.
You did, but this is a good one.
Matt, I struggle with your labeling of some things. I mean, I feel like sometimes the MC of this show does not get the credit it deserves.
Wow, you're a little on edge tonight, man.
Like, I am.
I think we need to do an intervention on you here.
I've been in 6 hours of master's level life coaching certification, and I think I'm just fried, and I've taken it out on you, Matt. So
shouldn't you be levitating right now if you've had that much training on life coaching? Like, shouldn't you just be floating above the rest of us?
I mean, the facilitator, because we're doing live, like virtual kind of, and I don't do it well. Sometimes I make sarcastic jokes, and our facilitator, I hope he's watching, get a sense of humor sometimes. But anyway, I get nailed every day. So how enough about me, you know, but I've taken it out on Matt. He kind of looks like the facilitator. So I think that's the connection.
Oh,
So
okay.
I was just saying that.
I'm the personification of your abuser. I get it. I get it.
No. I mean, that was a lie. I don't know why I said that. You guys don't look anything alike, but I'm just trying to get out of this conversation. So
Okay.
how do you intervene on someone who runs a podcast with oh my God, dang.
I told you this was going to be the most important question of the night.
That's a setup. That's a setup. And Matt, you did a really good job of, whatever. Good job. Good job.
Thank you, Musomi. Thank you very much for that question. And
man, I got to read these questions now. I didn't know that I got to a point where I have to read the questions from hecklers. Anyway. Well,
I'm never going to be invited back, am I?
Well, the way no one says yes to this, because I think they're scared of me. You may be on every week, but anyway, intervention on call. We've done a very terrible job of explaining intervention on call to all the people you see on the screen. You can go see our bios on intervention on call. Interventiononcall.com is it takes affordability to a whole new level. It's on demand, online. You can do virtual. You can do telephone calls. Everyone says you guys need to the family who says, you're hearing all the time you need to do an intervention. And then you just pick up the phone and Justin Deals and the Matt Browns and Leanne's, they're on the other line. You don't know them and struggle sometimes to pay those hefty intervention prices. So intervention on call, you can go down. I think we have 12 interventionists in that area. I don't know the exact number, but our bios are there. You can book 1 hour, 60-minute sessions, and it very well may be a situation where you don't need to do a face-to-face intervention. We can talk you through it, maybe on one session or two sessions. So we give you everything you got. We don't hold it back. There's no upsell at the end. It's like you don't click here for our half off intervention price. So for 60 minutes, you'll get a trained interventionist. You can talk about what to do, while they're in treatment. You can get them, what to do to get them to treatment, how to do an intervention, all the questions that are outlined. We can walk you through. So intervention on call, tremendous, affordable, online, on demand. There's a really good chance that no matter what hour of the day, you can probably find someone available within 3-4 hours if you want to do it, if there's a rush job. So did I do a good job of explaining? Anyone got anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, the way that I try to explain it, especially when you're talking about giving them everything we got. My goal when I get on the intervention on call session is to give them everything I can so they don't have to hire me. That's really the goal is, if we can do that, that's what we're really there to do. If, there's been times where I've been on a session and they're like, yeah, this is all great and everything, but we're going to need you to be there. And that's fine. I love doing what I do, but if we can avoid, that expense and the effort of having to do that, everybody wins.
Justin, got any closing thoughts or any criticism or encouragement for the host?
Well,
I think Jay needs some encouragement.
The criticism is you do need some better sports material in your background. And
I'm sorry.
I think his microphone just cut off.
Just the sight of champions must put your. I mean,
doesn't he play for the Jets? But anyway,
no, not yet.
It's $150 for that hour. Very affordable. Yeah. And to contradict, Matt, I think both last week's questions and this week's questions are all, were perfect examples of why you need intervention on call or, some sort of professional. Last week we talked about, how do you pick a place? This week we talked about who do we have there? These are all just questions that, Matt and I and you have been fielding for years, and Leanne is, joining the ranks. So, and the beautiful thing about intervention on call, if there's something that I don't know, which still happens, we have our own, communications.
You have me. You call me.
Yeah,
that's right.
Where we can reach out and say, hey, I haven't heard of this place, and the family is pushing for it. So there, out of our group, there isn't a whole lot of stuff that one of us doesn't know.
All right. Well, I know it's a random search, but I'm pretty sure you may be asked back next week, Justin. So good job on that. And outside of the comment about the Packers, but I like you. You got something in you. You know, when you contradict Matt, I'm all for it. That kind of perks my ears.
You're gonna go far, kid. You're gonna go far.
You're going to Jesus. Man, this show, it was on such a high note. And then
I'm sorry. Are you saying
thoughts?
did
and
we
I
just bring it
brought
down?
I just
Crash-
destroyed. I think the focus group is going to say get rid of the closing thought segment because we were doing really well until the closing. I started hazing Leanne.
Yes.
Shouldn't have done that. Karma got to us, and it's just. I mean,
Yeah.
the viewers just. The
Well.
viewers just went down, and I don't blame anyone for still watching. I mean, if you're still watching, God bless you. Thank you, Mom, for the support. So, anyway, let's do this again. We're going to do this every Tuesday, and we're going to try. I think we have, as of right now, we've got confirmed 3 new interventionists for next week. But who knows? Week happens, and intervention may happen. But anyway. Tune in next week. Thank you guys for joining, and I'll see you next week.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, guys.